Dear friends, welcome back to another episode of Interesting Chinese Culture. Today, let's talk about Chinese weddings. Every year around February, during the Chinese New Year season, city hotels are almost fully booked. Wedding planners work until after midnight. Ancestral halls in the countryside are decorated with lanterns and red banners, and social media fills with one red wedding invitation after another. Why do so many people choose to get married right before or after the Spring Festival? And why are Chinese weddings often so elaborate, with dozens of banquet tables, a complicated set of rituals, heavy gift money exchanges, and almost the entire extended family showing up? If you come to China in February, especially during the Spring Festival, you will notice a very common social scene. Red decorations appear everywhere on the streets. Firecrackers go off again and again, and in this festive atmosphere, the number of families holding weddings rises noticeably. For many foreign visitors who are new to Chinese culture, it can be shocking. At a single wedding, hundreds or even more than 1,000 people gather. They eat and drink for an entire day. The couple changes into one fancy outfit after another. The scale can feel almost like a major holiday celebration. So why does a wedding require so much preparation, involve so many people, and cost so much money? In many Western cultures, a wedding is often seen as a witness to two people's love. The ceremony is relatively simple, and the focus is on vows and the party. But in China, a wedding seems to carry much more than that. It is not just a ceremony. It is more like a complex social project. You might ask, why are Chinese weddings so grand? The reasons are not single or simple. They are the result of thousands of years of history, changes in social structure, and long-formed cultural habits working together. To understand this, we can not only look at today's wedding scenes, we have to return to the historical starting point and see how this ritual became more and more complex, and how it gradually took on many layers of meaning. For Chinese people, getting married has never been only about two individuals. Traditional Chinese society was built around a clan-based system. Its basic rule was a patrilineal bloodline, with the family as the main unit of society. Under this structure, marriage meant that a woman moved from her birth family into her husband's family and became part of another clan. The children she gave birth to would inherit the bloodline of the father's family. So a wedding was not only the union of two people, it was also a formal public announcement by a family that its bloodline would continue. In fact, what people see in Chinese weddings today is already a simplified version after many waves of history. If we turn the clock back a few thousand years, weddings were far more complicated, and they were major events among ordinary people. Let us go back 3,000 years, back to the Zhou dynasty. People in that time chose a very specific time for marriage, dusk. That is why the ancient term for the wedding ceremony was called the dusk rite. The word for dusk sounds the same as the word used in the modern word for marriage, and later people added the female radical to form the character used today. Why did people in the Zhou dynasty choose dusk? Because they respected heaven and earth, and believed dusk was the right moment, when yin and yang shifted and met, and when heaven and earth joined. The groom wore a black ceremonial robe. He led a wedding procession that was also dressed in black, riding in a black carriage pulled by black horses, and he went to meet the bride in the fading light. There were no firecrackers, there were no gongs and drums, there was not even music. The whole process was so solemn that it looked like a ritual offering. Yes, you heard that right, a ritual offering. At this point, some people may feel confused. A ritual offering sounds like something for honoring ancestors. It does not seem related to a joyful wedding at all. But in the Zhou dynasty, people placed marriage on the same level of importance as ancestral rites. The records of rituals explains it clearly. Marriage linked two families together. Looking upward, it was for serving the shared ancestors. Looking downward, it was for letting future generations continue. So from its very roots, the Chinese wedding was not a private matter between two people. It was a major matter between two families. As early as the pre-Qin period, the rites of Zhou had already provided a systematic set of rules for marriage. The wedding emphasized a process known as the 6 rites. These were the first proposal, the asking of the bride's name, the confirmation of good fortune, the giving of betrothal gifts, the setting of the wedding date, and the formal act of personally bringing the bride home. The core of this whole process was not romance. It was to confirm whether the two families matched in status, bloodline, social rank, and interests. Marriage was a key point in a clan-based society. It affected the continuation of the family line, the inheritance of property, and the stability of social order. In fact, this whole process had already been clearly defined back in the Zhou dynasty. It was not only complicated, but it also took a significant amount of time to complete. There was absolutely no such thing as a quick marriage in that era. So how complex was it? The first step was that the groom's family asked a matchmaker to visit the bride's family to propose marriage. They had to bring a wild goose as a gift. This step was called na kai, the formal proposal. Why a wild goose? Because ancient people believed that a wild goose would have only one partner in its lifetime. By presenting a goose, the groom's family was expressing loyalty and lifelong commitment. The second step was to ask for the bride's name and her date and time of birth. These details were taken back to the ancestral temple, where divination was performed to see whether the couple's birth data were compatible. This system was based on the theory of yin and yang and the 5 elements. This step was called wenming and naji, meaning asking the name and confirming good fortune. The third step came only if the divination result was favorable. This may sound superstitious to modern ears, but in ancient times even emperors firmly believed in divination and fortune-telling. If the royal court trusted it, ordinary families certainly did as well. Once the birth data were considered compatible, the groom's family formally sent betrothal gifts to the bride's family. This time, the gifts were far more valuable than a wild goose. They could include silk fabrics, animal furs, money, and other valuable goods. This was also the stage when the groom's family demonstrated its financial strength. This step was called na zeng, which is similar to what we would now call an engagement. The fourth step was for the groom's family to choose an auspicious wedding date. They would then bring gifts again to the bride's family to seek their agreement. This step was called qing qi, meaning to request and confirm the wedding date. The final step was qin ying. The groom personally went to the bride's home to escort her back to his family. Only then was the marriage considered complete. When history moved into the Han dynasty, things began to change slightly. Emperor Wu of Han promoted Confucianism as the dominant ideology of the state and pushed Confucian ritual standards to a very high level. At the same time, ordinary people began to care more about display and celebration in daily life. Emperor Zhuan of Han eventually issued an edict allowing music to be played at weddings. This officially broke the old Zhou rule that weddings should not include music. The custom of teasing the bridal chamber also began during the Han dynasty. From that point on, Chinese weddings gradually moved in a more lively direction. Han dynasty brides still wore the deep robe style inherited from the Zhou period. It was layered and wrapped the body tightly. The main colors remained black and light red. However, hair ornaments became much more elaborate. There were dangling hairpins, decorative pins, and earrings. Silk production was already highly developed at that time. Brides from wealthy families wore wedding robes embroidered with cloud patterns and auspicious animal designs. When they walked, the skirts flowed, and the ornaments shimmered in the light. As Confucianism became the official ideology of the state, the ethical meaning of weddings grew stronger. The Han dynasty emphasized filial piety and family hierarchy. The part of the ceremony in which the bride formally greeted her elders became more structured and strict. On the morning after the wedding, the bride had to visit her parents-in-law, present gifts, and show respect and obedience. This ritual was called meeting the parents-in-law, and it was crucial in establishing her status within her husband's family. If the parents-in-law were dissatisfied, her position in the household could become very difficult. This social pressure also pushed the bride's family to prepare the wedding carefully, trying to make everything perfect so that their daughter would not suffer after marriage. During the Han dynasty, weddings also placed greater emphasis on banquets. Although there had been drinking in Zhou ceremonies, Han banquets were larger and involved more guests. The Han period was relatively stable, and the economy had developed. As a result, families had stronger social networking needs. Weddings became platforms for families to display their social connections. The more guests invited, the greater the family's influence appeared to be. This social function directly pushed wedding celebrations to grow in scale. The legal force of marriage was also strengthened in the Han dynasty. The government began to regulate marriage more actively. It set minimum marriage ages and defined prohibited conditions. For example, the rule that people with the same surname could not marry was strictly enforced. This was partly to avoid the risks of close blood relations and partly to expand alliance networks between different families. With legal regulation in place, marriage was no longer only a folk custom. It became a tool for the state to manage society. As time passed, history entered the Wei, Jin, and Northern and Southern dynasties period. This was a time of political instability, but also intense cultural exchange. Northern nomadic groups entered the Central Plains and brought their own customs. These customs mixed and sometimes clashed with traditional Han wedding practices. For example, Northern nomadic peoples enjoyed music and dance. This preference gradually influenced Han weddings. Earlier, according to Zhou ritual standards, weddings were serious and even somewhat restrained. They emphasized solemnity and discouraged excessive entertainment. But after the Wei and Jin period, the custom of teasing the bridal chamber became widespread. Teasing the bridal chamber refers to the practice on the wedding night when relatives and friends gather around the new couple's room. They play jokes and small games to tease the bride and groom. There are several explanations for the origin of this custom. One explanation says it was meant to drive away evil spirits. Ancient people believed that the wedding night might attract ghosts or bad forces, and loud, lively sounds could scare them away. Another explanation links it to the influence of northern ethnic customs. In ancient arranged marriages, the bride and groom might barely know each other before the wedding. Teasing the bridal chamber could serve as a social tool to break the awkwardness between two strangers and help them connect more quickly. No matter its exact origin, the spread of this custom increased the entertainment aspect of weddings. More people participated, the atmosphere became livelier, and the sense of grandeur grew stronger. Step by step, Chinese weddings became not only solemn rituals, but also large-scale social gatherings filled with sound, movement, and public involvement. During this period, wedding clothing also began to change. Although the Han Dynasty mainly valued red and black, the Wei and Jin period saw the rise of metaphysical thought, and clothing styles became more flowing and relaxed. Wedding attire also became more diverse. Today, many people assume that getting married means wearing bright red, as if that has always been the rule. In fact, across several thousand years of history, red became the main wedding color much later than most people imagine. The first group to formally define wedding colors were people of the Zhou dynasty. In their view, the color of heaven was called zhuan, a very dark shade that looked black with a hint of red. The color of earth was called zhun, a light reddish tone. So Zhou wedding clothing followed what was known as the zhuan and zhun combination. The main color was yuan, with zhun used only as decoration along the edges. The groom wore what was called zhoubian attire. He had a specific ceremonial headpiece and wore a black upper garment with a light reddish lower skirt. The bride wore what was called a pure robe with zhun trim. It was a black silk ceremonial robe with light red borders on the collar and sleeves. When you looked at the whole outfit, it appeared almost entirely dark and solemn, more like clothing for a ritual ceremony than for a celebration. By the time of the Qin dynasty, in addition to black, colors such as bright red and yellowish red began to appear in wedding garments. However, the overall tone still centered on black. Then came the Wei, Jin, and Northern and Southern dynasties, and suddenly the style changed. White became fashionable. Yes, white. Today, people in China associate red with happy events and white with mourning, but during the Wei and Jin period, white wedding clothing was not taboo at all. In fact, it was popular among the upper classes. The preference for white was connected to the metaphysical ideas of the time. There were constant wars, and many scholars pursued a return to simplicity and naturalness. In Taoist thought, white represented purity, simplicity, and detachment from worldly concerns. Wearing white to marry was seen as refined and elegant. It had nothing to do with funerals in that context. When history moved into the Tang dynasty, the color scheme changed again. This time, the pairing was described as red for the groom and green for the bride. The red was not bright scarlet, but a deep reddish shade. The green was not vivid emerald, but a bluish green, somewhere between blue and green. Tang people referred to this color as qing. Some explanations say that qing symbolized wood, which stood for growth and prosperity, while red symbolized joy and passion. Others say that red paired with green was considered a luxurious combination at the time. People of the Tang dynasty favored strong colors and bold expression. This reflected the confident and open spirit of that era. The bride wore a large-sleeved, qing-colored ceremonial robe. Her hair was decorated with elaborate floral hairpins made of gold, silver, colored glass, and precious stones. They were extremely ornate. The groom wore a deep red official robe. During the Tang dynasty, there was a rule that allowed the groom to wear an official robe one rank higher than his actual status on his wedding day. Even common people could temporarily wear a red robe associated with a lower rank official. That is why even today, the groom in Chinese is still called the new official groom, a term that can be traced back to the Tang dynasty. Later, during the Song dynasty, tastes shifted again. Song society valued restraint and did not favor the bold and extravagant style of the Tang period. Brides still wore Qing-colored robes with large sleeves, but the tone was softer and less intense. Grooms still wore red. Song men also began to place flowers in their hair during weddings, a custom borrowed from celebration banquets for newly successful examination candidates. It symbolized a smaller kind of achievement. However, wedding clothing colors in the Song dynasty also reflected social hierarchy. There was a saying that if the bride married into a lower status family, she wore red. If she married into a higher status family, she wore green. In other words, if her family was of higher standing than the groom's family, she was considered marrying downward and would wear red. If her family was of lower standing and she was marrying upward, she would wear green. At that time, red was considered the more prestigious color, so simply by looking at the bride's clothing color, people could tell the relative status of the two families. This was a distinct feature of Song dynasty customs. The real turning point came during the Ming dynasty. The founding emperor of the Ming dynasty had the surname Zhu. The word Zhu also means red. People of the Ming dynasty believed that red represented the element of fire, a symbol of good fortune and of the destiny of the state. Zhu Yuanzhang restored Han Chinese dress traditions and set a clear standard. He declared that clothing colors should favor red. From that point on, the bride's ceremonial dress officially became bright red. The vivid red, long-sleeved robe, paired with the phoenix crown and chape, became the classic image of a Chinese bride. The phoenix crown was a golden headdress decorated with phoenix designs, inlaid with pearls, jade, and kingfisher feathers. The chape was a long, colorful shoulder scarf that draped from the shoulders all the way down, flowing like clouds in the sky. Under Ming rules, the phoenix crown and chape were originally reserved for noble women, but Zhu Yuanzhang made an exception. He allowed common women to temporarily adopt the dress of a low-ranking titled lady on their wedding day. This permission immediately stirred great enthusiasm among ordinary families. Whether wealthy or not, when a daughter married, her family would try to prepare a proper phoenix crown and chape. If they could not afford real gold, they would use silver, copper, or even paper substitutes. From then on, red became firmly rooted in the Chinese mind. Getting married meant wearing red. Bright red meant celebration. Weddings in the Ming dynasty also became increasingly grand. The dowry procession could stretch across several streets. Chests, cabinets, quilts, pillows, even chamber pots and wash basins were carried to the groom's home. This was called preparing the bridal chamber, meaning that the new home was fully set up in advance. In the Ming novel, The Plum in the Golden Vase, it is described that wealthy families would include large step beds as part of the dowry. These beds were so big that they looked like small wooden rooms. They were tall, enclosed with railings on all sides, and had a canopy on top. Sleeping inside felt like resting in a small house. The step bed was one of the most valuable dowry items at the time. If a family could send one with their daughter, it was considered very impressive. After the Qing dynasty entered the Central Plains, they brought Manchu customs with them. Manchu brides wore a red kiapao, embroidered with flowers and birds, often with a short jacket over it. They wore a tall headdress decorated with silk flowers and jewelry. On their feet, they wore high platform shoes known as flower pot soles, sometimes 4 or 5 inches high. They often needed assistance to walk, moving slowly and carefully, creating a distinct style. However, among the Han population, wedding customs largely continued the Ming traditions. Brides wore the phoenix crown and jape and traveled in a large sedan chair carried by 8 men. So during the Qing dynasty, wedding customs existed side by side. Manchu families followed their own traditions, Han families followed theirs, and sometimes elements were mixed, but generally each group maintained its own style. This traditional wedding system, passed down for thousands of years, suddenly faced a challenge in the late Qing and early Republican period. After the Opium War, more foreigners came to China and brought Western culture and customs with them. Some young people who had studied abroad or had broader experience began to feel that the traditional 6 rites were too complicated. Bowing to heaven and earth, bowing to parents, bowing to each other. the entire day of ritual could leave the bride exhausted. So they created a new style of wedding. The groom wore a suit. The bride wore a white wedding gown. The couple walked into a hall arm in arm. The witness was no longer a family elder, but a well-known public figure, preferably an official or a respected scholar. In the center of the hall, there were often 2 national flags and sometimes a portrait of Sun Yat-sen. The couple would bow 3 times to the flag and to the portrait. The marriage certificate was no longer a handwritten red notice, but a printed formal document. The couple, the witness, the introducer, and the host all had to sign and stamp it. In 1905, a Shanghai newspaper reported on what it called a civilized wedding. It took place at 3 in the afternoon at a private residence. First, women sang congratulatory songs. Then the introducer explained how the marriage came about. The host read the certificate. The couple, along with the introducer and the host, signed their names. The bride and groom bowed to each other, thanked the introducer and the host, and then paid respects to both sets of parents. After that, several people gave speeches, and the couple delivered a response. When the ceremony ended, everyone applauded warmly and then went to a restaurant for a meal. In many ways, this looks very similar to modern wedding scenes today. In ancient China, when people spoke about distance, there was a phrase used to describe a woman's marriage: 10 miles of red dowry. This was not an exaggerated expression. It described real scenes that once existed in history. Why did people use the number 10 miles to describe the scale of a dowry? Why were these dowries all red? Behind this phrase lies a larger story about wealth, status, family honor, and the final gesture of care that parents could offer their daughter. To explain 10 miles of red dowry clearly, we need to begin with the Song Dynasty. The Song Dynasty was one of the most economically developed periods in Chinese history. Cities were filled with shops, night markets stayed open until dawn, and ordinary people had more money than before. As wealth increased, families began to compete in major life events such as weddings and funerals. In particular, marrying off a daughter became a quiet battlefield between 2 families. If your family offered a large bride price, mine had to prepare an equally impressive dowry. If your family sent large gift chests, mine had to send even larger cabinets in return. This competition became especially intense in the Jiangnan region, especially in areas like Jiangsu and Zhejiang, where commerce was highly developed. By the Southern Song period, the court had moved south and established its capital in Lenan, which is present-day Hangzhou. The Jiangnan region became the political and economic center of the country. Wealthy merchants and scholar officials gathered there. If a family married off their daughter with too small a dowry, they would lose face among relatives, and the daughter might suffer disrespect in her husband's household. At that time, there was a common saying that if the dowry was thin, the bride would have to lower her head after entering the new home. To prevent their daughters from living in a weak position, parents kept adding more and more to the dowry. At first, dowries consisted mainly of practical items. Quilts, pillows, clothing, jewelry, wash basins, foot basins, and chamber pots were all basic necessities for daily life. Gradually, the list expanded. Tables, chairs, cabinets, and storage chests were added. Later still, families included land deeds, houses, shops, and sometimes even servant girls. These items were not simply delivered quietly to the groom's family. They were carried in a public procession through the streets. The purpose was straightforward. The entire city was meant to see that the dowry was marrying with honor, and that her family was willing and able to invest generously in her future. This custom began in the Song Dynasty and continued into the Ming Dynasty. By the Middle and Late Ming period, it reached its peak. During the Middle and Late Ming Dynasty, commercial development in the Jiangnan region reached new heights. Cities such as Suzhou, Hangzhou, and Yangzhou prospered through silk, porcelain, and tea trade. A large group of wealthy merchants emerged. These merchants had money but lacked official rank. What they needed most was social status. Marrying off a daughter became a strategic opportunity. If they could form marriage ties with official families and marry their daughters into households of scholars and officials, it meant gaining access to higher social circles. But official families had high standards. Why would they accept the daughter of a merchant? The answer was the dowry. As a result, a dowry competition unfolded in the Jiangnan region during the late Ming period. Merchant families piled valuable items into the dowry in order to gain connections with officials. Official families, in order to maintain dignity, also had to prepare matching displays. As both sides competed, The scale of dowries grew larger and larger. What had once been a few chests became dozens. Dozens became hundreds. When there were too many chests for one person to carry, 2 were needed. When 2 were not enough, 4 were assigned. As the number of carriers increased, the procession naturally grew longer. The phrase 10 miles of red dowry became popular during the Middle and Late Ming Dynasty. It originally described the most extravagant weddings of elite families. Only the daughter of a high-ranking minister or the child of a salt merchant whose wealth rivaled that of the state could assemble a dowry procession that stretched for what people described as 10 miles. 10 miles was not always literal. It meant extremely long, so long that the end could not be seen. So what exactly was being carried in that long procession? Records from the Ming Dynasty leave us with a very detailed list. At the very front of the procession were usually festive signboards and ceremonial displays. On the boards were written the character for happiness, sometimes the double happiness symbol, or the bride's family name and official title. The ceremonial display imitated the procession of government officials. There were objects shaped like golden maces, ceremonial axes, and tall lantern stands. They were usually made of wood and painted with gold powder, but they looked impressive. They told everyone watching from the roadside that this family's daughter was marrying in grand style. Behind the ceremonial display came the main focus: furniture. First came the bed. In the Zhengnan region, the most expensive type of bed was called the step bed, also known as the thousand-work bed. Why was it called thousand-work? In traditional terms, one work meant one craftsman working for one day. 1,000 work meant about 1,000 days of labor. It could take nearly 3 years to complete a single bed. How large was it? It was like a small room. It had railings on all 4 sides and a canopy on top. In front, there was a small corridor space, and on both sides of that space, there was room for a chamber pot or a dressing table. When someone slept inside, it felt like resting in a separate wooden cabin. The bed frame was carved with detailed patterns, dragons and phoenixes together, mythical animals bringing sons, peonies symbolizing wealth. It was often inlaid with ivory, mother of pearl, or jade. A bed like this was extremely valuable. It was the most impressive item in the dowry. If a family could include a step bed in their daughter's dowry, it was a great source of pride. After the bed came the cabinets. There were wardrobes, book cabinets, jewelry cabinets, food storage cabinets, large and small, tall and short. In Zhengnan, cabinets were often made of elm or camphor wood, which resisted insects and was suitable for storing clothing. The front panels were carved, gilded, and painted in bright red lacquer. This red lacquer was not applied casually. It required more than 10 layers. Each layer had to dry and be polished before the next was applied. In the end, the surface shone like a gemstone. After the cabinets came tables and chairs, square dining tables, official-style armchairs, music tables, painting desks were carried in complete sets. These pieces had to match each other in color, style, and carving design. This showed that the items belonged together as a full household set, not something gathered piece by piece. Behind the furniture were daily necessities. Quilts, pillows, and bed curtains were stacked in chests. Pots, bowls, plates, tea kettles, and wine cups were wrapped carefully in red silk. Then came chamber pots, foot basins, and bathing tubs. In northern regions, such items might not have been considered impressive, but in Zhengnan dowries they were essential. They were made with great care. The chamber pot was called the sons and grandsons bucket. Inside it, families placed red dates, peanuts, longan fruit, and lotus seeds, all symbols of early children and many descendants. The outside of the bucket was carved, gilded, and polished to a shine. When displayed in the procession, people would admire the attention to detail. Further back in the procession were jewelry and clothing. These were carried in open chests. The lids were not closed. They were left open so that people along the street could see the gold and silver shining inside. Gold bracelets, gold rings, gold earrings, gold hairpins were arranged neatly on red silk cloth. Clothing was folded in sets, embroidered with phoenixes and peonies, in bright red and fresh green. At the very end of the procession, There were sometimes property deeds for land or houses. These were wrapped in red silk and carried personally by the bride's brothers. This sent a clear message to the groom's family. The bride was not arriving empty-handed. She brought land and property with her. She deserved respect. This was the concrete image of 10 miles of red dowry. It was not only about money, it was about dignity. The richer the dowry, the more it showed that the bride's family valued her. It showed her position within her birth family. It also showed the importance of the alliance between the two households. For the groom's family, marrying such a bride brought honor. For the bride's family, sending her in such style brought pride. But 10 miles of red dowry carried another meaning as well, one even heavier than reputation. In ancient China, once a daughter married, she became part of another family. She could not freely return to her parents' home. She could not interfere in her birth family's affairs. Even the property of her parents no longer had anything to do with her. No matter how wealthy her parents were, that wealth was usually reserved for sons. A daughter did not inherit it. So how could parents show their love for their daughter? How could they ensure that she would live well in her husband's household? There was only one practical way: the dowry. The dowry was the only property a daughter could take with her. The richer the dowry, the stronger her position in her new home. If she brought valuable goods, she had confidence. If she had no assets of her own, she might have to endure more pressure. So 10 miles of red dowry was not only for outsiders to admire, it was also a message to the husband's family. Our daughter is not coming empty-handed. She arrives with wealth. You should treat her with respect. Those step beds, those gilded cabinets, those complete sets of furniture were not only property, they were also protection. They accompanied the bride into an unfamiliar household and stayed with her through daily life. When she grew old, these items could be passed on to her children and continue into the next generation. This was the emotional side of 10 miles of red dowry. The heavy furniture, the shining jewelry, the red lacquered chests all carried the parents' final gesture of care. They gave everything they could to their daughter, hoping these objects would stand beside her in the years ahead. By the Qing dynasty, the trend of 10 miles of red dowry became even more extreme, to the point that it troubled officials. During the Kangxi period, a governor of Zhejiang reported that families competed in extravagance when marrying off daughters. Some families would exhaust their savings just to prepare an impressive dowry. By the late Qing and early Republican era, as Western culture entered China, wedding forms gradually became simpler. In cities, new-style weddings emphasized simplicity and modern values. The long dowry processions became less common. However, the phrase 10 miles of red dowry remained. It became a general expression meaning a very generous dowry, and is still used today. Today, in Ninghai in Zhejiang province, there is a museum dedicated to 10 miles of red dowry. Inside, hundreds or even thousands of old dowry items are displayed. Red lacquered chests, step beds, and sons' and grandsons' buckets stand quietly in the halls. The paint is faded, the carvings are worn, but the craftsmanship is still visible. They show visitors what marrying off a daughter once looked like, and what 10 miles of red dowry truly meant. So why did people say 10 miles of red dowry? Because it once existed. It described a long red procession moving through villages and towns, carrying parents' hopes, family reputation, and a daughter's future into a new household. The road was long, and in many ways, it symbolized the long path of her life. Now, let us return to the present and talk about why so many weddings are held during the Spring Festival. Even though modern transportation is convenient, the Spring Festival remains the period of the largest population movement in China. Many young people who work far from home can only take extended leave during this time. Choosing to marry during the Spring Festival is a practical balance between work schedules and family expectations. In traditional thinking, the first lunar month is considered an auspicious time. The culture of selecting favorable dates has a long history in China. As early as the Han Dynasty, calendar systems and the theories of yin and yang and the 5 elements were connected to marriage practices. Before marriage, families would compare the birth data of the couple and select an auspicious day. The period around the Spring Festival is seen as a time when positive energy rises and a new cycle begins. This is one reason it has become a popular wedding season. Now let us look at the specific details of weddings that show their grand character. First is the use of color. As mentioned earlier, red is the dominant tone. From lanterns and carpets to invitations and clothing, red appears everywhere. Visually, red is strong and eye-catching. It creates an intense and festive atmosphere. For foreigners, it may seem overwhelming, but within the Chinese cultural context, red represents celebration, good fortune, and protection against negative forces. Using red at a wedding serves as a psychological reassurance that the couple's future life will be smooth and protected. Another important feature is attention to numbers. Chinese weddings place great emphasis on numerical symbolism. For example, the amount of money given as bride price or gift money is often an even number because good things are believed to come in pairs. The quantity of items is often 6, 8, or 10, all considered fortunate numbers. 6 suggests smooth progress. 8 is associated with wealth. 10 suggests completeness. This attention to numbers adds another layer of preparation because families must carefully calculate amounts and avoid mistakes. Another important aspect is the symbolic meaning of food. Every dish served at a wedding banquet carries a specific name and a specific blessing. Fish represents abundance year after year. Chicken represents good fortune. Red dates, longan, and lotus seeds placed together symbolize the wish for children soon. These dishes are not only meant to be eaten, they function as cultural messages. While guests enjoy the meal, they are also receiving these layers of meaning. Preparing such symbolic dishes requires considerable effort. Ingredients must be fresh. Presentation must be attractive. This adds to the overall cost of the wedding. In addition, the division of roles at a wedding is very clear. Besides the bride and groom, there are best men and bridesmaids, a master of ceremonies, coordinators, and reception staff. Each person has a defined responsibility to make sure the ceremony proceeds smoothly. The structure resembles the management of a small project. It requires careful coordination. If one link fails, the entire event can be affected. For this reason, many families hire professional wedding planning companies. This, of course, increases financial investment. In Chinese culture, ancestors are regarded as protectors of the family. Ignoring them is seen as a lack of filial respect. Therefore, even though modern weddings have simplified many elements, ancestral rites are still preserved in many regions. This respect for ancestors means that weddings cannot be handled casually. They must follow certain established procedures. So without the ancient betrothal rituals and the grand scenes of 10 miles of red dowry, what do dowries and bride price look like today? The economic movement between dowry and bride price remains a substantial part of the wedding. A wedding is, in many ways, a redistribution of wealth between two families. The groom's side transfers wealth to the bride's family in the form of bride price. The bride's family transfers wealth to the newly formed household in the form of dowry. This flow of assets can involve large sums of money, property, vehicles, and jewelry. To demonstrate sincerity and transparency, families often display these items during the wedding. Dowry chests may be sealed and carried by designated relatives. Cash gifts may be arranged neatly on a table and wrapped in red paper. Gold necklaces and bracelets for the bride are shown publicly. The choice of hotel and the selection of banquet dishes also reflect financial commitment. This public display confirms the strength of both families and provides a sense of economic security for the couple. Regional differences also influence how grand a wedding appears. In northern regions such as Shanxi or Shanxi, weddings may emphasize the preparation of wheat-based foods and the completeness of clan rituals. In some areas, cave dwellings are decorated in distinctive styles for wedding ceremonies. In southern provinces such as Fujian and Guangdong, more attention may be given to ancestral hall rituals and the value of betrothal gifts. In coastal regions, there may even be elements connected to sea-related beliefs. Among ethnic minority communities, weddings can be even more colorful. Miao weddings often include antiphonal singing. Tibetan weddings may include the presentation of ceremonial scarves. Mongolian weddings highlight steppe traditions, with the groom riding on horseback to greet the bride. Tibetan ceremonies emphasize religious rites. Miao brides wear elaborate silver ornaments. Although the forms differ, the common feature is that weddings are public family rituals. Holding a wedding sends several messages at once. It tells everyone that two families have formed a connection. It tells relatives and friends that a new household has been created and that they are welcome to visit. It tells neighbors and colleagues that a marriage has begun and that mutual support is expected. The more lively the wedding, the more people know about it, and the stronger the social foundation of the marriage appears to be. In the end, a Chinese wedding is a public declaration and a confirmation of social relationships. Over thousands of years, styles have changed, colors have shifted, and rituals have been adjusted, but this core function has remained the same. So why hold weddings around February, during the spring festival season? Because this is when the most people are present. Those working away from home return. Those studying away from home return. All the aunts, uncles, and distant relatives gather in one place. If you marry at this time, you do not need to notify people one by one, and you do not need to worry about who cannot make it. During a season of reunion, you hold a happy event as well. Two good things arrive together, and that feels like a good sign. Also, in traditional thinking, the first lunar month is considered an auspicious period. The practice of choosing favorable dates has a long history in China. The time around the Spring Festival is believed to bring rising positive energy and a new beginning, so it becomes a popular choice. This is what a Chinese wedding is like. It compresses thousands of years of history into one day of celebration. To understand why Chinese weddings are so grand, the key is to understand the collective-oriented cultural logic behind them. When multiple responsibilities stack together, the wedding cannot be simple. Every part of it is balancing different interests and meeting different expectations. For example, the menu has to consider the taste of elders and also the preferences of younger guests. The ceremony needs to feel traditional, but also include modern elements. The guest list must take care of relatives and also include colleagues and friends. This balancing act requires a great deal of communication and preparation. Even though society is more equal today, many people still, at a subconscious level, hope to gain social recognition through the scale of the wedding. If the wedding is too simple, others may misunderstand it as a sign of financial difficulty or a lack of seriousness about the marriage. To avoid that misunderstanding, families often choose to hold a wedding that is larger than what is strictly necessary. For foreign friends who want to understand Chinese culture, attending a Chinese wedding is an excellent window into Chinese society. You can see relationships between generations. Parents often have a strong voice in wedding decisions, and some weddings include carefully designed emotional moments, reflecting the influence of filial piety culture. You can also see that modern life still carries traces of traditional role division. You can see economic thinking, because the exchange of gift money reflects the reciprocal logic of a relationship-based social world. You can see belief systems, because bowing to heaven, earth, and ancestors reflects a mix of multiple deities and ancestor worship. All these elements come together in one wedding, making it a condensed cultural package. Because it carries so much cultural information, it has to be grand and large enough to hold all of it. For many foreigners, it can be hard to understand why a wedding needs to invite hundreds of people. In Chinese society, interpersonal networks are often described as a relationship-based social world. Weddings are key nodes in this system. Guests give gift money, and when those guests hold their own events in the future, the original family returns the gift. This forms a long-running mechanism of social credit and reciprocity. A large wedding suggests a wide social network. Chinese weddings are so elaborate because historically they have been given social functions beyond personal emotion. A wedding is a contract of family alliance, a ritual connected to ancestors, a display of economic resources, a confirmation of social relationships, and a continuation of cultural practices. From the 6 rites of the Zhou dynasty to today's hybrid ceremonies, every added element has its historical logic. Outsiders may see it as overly complicated, but for many people inside the system, it is a necessary cost for stability in marriage, harmony between families, and public recognition. That cost includes money, time, and effort, but it produces social capital and a sense of cultural belonging. History leaves its mark on the present. It shapes how people understand family and social ties. Through elaborate ceremonies, that understanding becomes visible, repeated, and preserved.
If you enjoyed today's episode, feel free to give the show a like, subscribe, and share it with someone you think would enjoy it too. Every listen, every like, and every share truly makes a difference. It directly shapes how far this program can go, and it gives me the motivation to keep digging into the sources, keep asking questions, and keep telling these fascinating stories of history and culture in a clear and engaging way. Thank you for spending this time with me. I will see you in the next episode.